Let's see.
Welcome back to Aurora Airwaves, everyone. Jordan Bianchi here, your host, and Amanda Bintz, one of my favorite recurring guests, is back. Hey, Amanda, what's going on?
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Not much. How are you?
Good. All matcha fueled up, ready to go, ready
Nice.
for this. I don't know, this like deep dive conversation that we've been wanting to have. We have been talking about it through our series of voice messages, which is like our own podcast.
Yes. Yes. And the scheduling, I don't want to say nightmare,
Chaos.
but scheduling chaos of trying to with the busy holiday season, trying to get
Yeah.
it together and do this. But now we're doing it. This is great. And it's not too far past the end of November. So we've had a little bit of time for these things to, sink in,
Yeah, really.
reflections to form, I
I
hope.
feel like we've had some reflections too, which is good. I'm curious of like what reflections are going to come out through all of this.
Hmm.
But just a little bit of context for everybody. November is National Novel Writing Month, and it's something that Amanda and I have been looking at doing and thinking about for, I mean, honestly, for years and years and years. And this year we were sort of considering it, and throughout the year we just had different approaches to looking at what this whole thing is. NaNoWriMo, you have to write 50,000 words in a month, which is why they chose November for that. Couldn't they have chosen like February or like March?
Yeah.
Not like a
Yeah,
month with holidays and stuff.
I feel like I wonder what their logic was in choosing November. Because I did a lot
It's
of
probably just
like,
the alliteration.
right, that's
I mean,
gotta be what it is, because otherwise it really doesn't make any sense. Because, I did like a little research on the origins of NaNoWriMo when I was working on my blog post about it.
oh yeah.
And nothing, like, I feel like it just always was like November, like the whole time. I'm just like, why November? You're right. Why not
It
February, a
was
month
definitely
when
like
like
three
nothing
people in a
happens?
room that were like,
Yeah.
we need like an
And maybe
accountability
in
system.
October they were like, let's do it next month.
Yeah, literally. Let's just bang it out and
And
get
there's
our things done and
alliteration. It's
move on.
perfect. Let's just do it. Yeah. Yeah. November is not a great month for it. I wonder how that works out for anybody else, but that was part of the reason why I realized it didn't make sense to do it for me. Because November, what changes to give you more time in that month? Actually, you have less time usually in that month than you normally do.
Well, that's the plot twist that we were considering it, and then
Hmm.
you were really considering it, and
I was ready. I
you
was
were
gonna
ready
do
like
it.
earlier, way earlier in the year.
Yeah, I guess maybe we should
So
give
through
like a little bit of like a maybe we should where we both
the
were at with
perception
it.
warp, like how that journey went. You go first,
Okay,
because
so
yours is
I think because
fascinating, and I
I
think
think
it's
I
great.
was the one who really brought it, like I think I was the first one who brought it to the table.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was probably, I know that I did my outline in July. So I feel like when
Hmm.
I was considering it was probably in like maybe like May or like
Oh, I
late in
think it
the
was
spring.
earlier.
You think it was earlier?
I think it
Maybe
was
it was
like
like
March or something that you were.
that I
Because
was
you were
bringing it
thinking
up.
ahead to what you had to get done in the spring so that in the summer you could have the runway cleared so that you could just
Yes,
do it.
yes,
Because when
yes.
did we stop working on the hearth?
That was like June or July, I think, that we
You think?
paused work
Okay.
on the hearth, because then I finished my outline like soon after that. But
Like right away. Who'd have
like
thought?
right away.
Who'd have
But
thought?
like I was like, you know what? Like I have had this this outline on my to-do list. I've had like this book that I've wanted to finish for so long. I just felt like, and also I think writing a short like writing a first draft of the novel was on like my goals for the year or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, well, I'll just do it. Well, I'll do NaNoWriMo. Like I'll write it all in November. I'll do it like I did in college. I'll just like have that deadline and I'll just, you know, work not, nonstop, and I'll just like power through, and I'll just stay up late and drink lots of coffee and just, write really fast and a lot, and it'll be great, and I'll just finish it and then I'll be done. And that was my thinking with it, that it would be just like a really good like deadline to create for myself.
Hmm.
Um, and then I think we were talking about, I think I just brought it up to you. Like I was like, I'm thinking about doing NaNoWriMo. Would you want to do it with me? And I remember you were just like, no.
No.
You were like,
No.
no. Like, I've never liked the idea of that. Like, I don't know. And then like as we were talking, you were like, oh, maybe though, like maybe it'd
No,
be
I liked
good.
the idea of it, just not for me.
Right, right,
Like it
right.
was something I
Gotcha.
wanted to do, but like
Yeah.
didn't want to have to do
Yes.
it.
Yes, that's fair. And then we like talked about, like we talked about it more, and we were like, oh, it might be good. Like we could do it together. We could like, you know, just like support each other through it and like talk about it during it. And
Yeah.
I was like, my whole year, I was kind of like, I had that in the background. Like, I'm doing NaNoWriMo this year. This November, I'm going to be writing 50,000 words to finish my novel. And then after we paused working on our like long-term fantasy fiction podcast project, um, I was like, I'm going to do the outline because I need to do the outline so that I can do NaNoWriMo, because I need to know what I'm writing in order to write it.
Hmm.
And I did the outline in July. And then I remember I was just like, just kind of like sitting there with it done. And I was like, why don't I just start writing? Like why
Yeah.
would I wait till November? Like I know what I need to write. Why don't I just start writing? Um, and that was sort of what slowly led me to not ending up doing NaNoWriMo, because I started writing in like August or something like that. So
Well, so a little
should I
context,
say,
if like people are like hopping in and they haven't listened to these other episodes, like
yeah.
Amanda and I have been working on our books for like at least a decade, I would say. Like, and these ideas have been floating around for longer. And I think for a long time we individually thought, oh, we were just like anomalies in the big sea of fantastically, published authors and talented people. And it's like, no, like everybody's holding on to books and everyone's trying to get their first story told.
Hmm.
Excuse me. But I think that I just before I talk about my reflections, like it was really cool to see the outline stage for you get unlocked
Hmm.
because that was something that we had always talked about, but I think that for whatever reason we didn't hop. I think I tried to push outlining for myself and it was just wasn't working. And I
Hmm.
think you sort of stayed away from it because you were looking at just figuring this out in a different way. But it was interesting to see that by looking ahead to NaNoWriMo and the structure of that, it kind of, from my perception, gave you the ability to say, okay, if I get the game plan, then I can
Hmm.
hop in and go for it. And I was just surprised at like, you literally banged that outline out in like 2, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
10 years of holding something
yeah.
in, and granted, it's 10 years of like doing a lot of inner work and
Yes.
learning how to write, doing short form, and
And
growing up,
thinking about it,
thinking about
like
it. Yeah.
thinking about it all that time, too. Like I feel like that you can't like discount how much like a lot of work goes into these things, these projects, that isn't the actual writing. Like all
Yeah.
those years that you spend like thinking about it, jotting down ideas, considering new angles, like all of that stuff is there. And I think that's what I think it was with the outline. Well, it was because I knew I needed to have the outline in order to be able to do NaNoWriMo. So it was like, okay, I gotta figure this out, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not like, and that's really like big thing. Like even it's not perfect. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think that took a long time of like the outline, I think it really was so interesting because I just sat and I took index cards and I just wrote everything that I knew that was going to happen in the story on the index cards. Like every individual thing I knew, like, and events that were going to happen. And then I ended up with like maybe like 60 of them. And then I figured out how to condense them down into that 40 card structure that you told me
Mm,
about.
hmm.
And I was pretty loose with it, but I liked how it was like 10 cards for the first act, 20 cards for the second act, and 10 cards for the third act. And it like actually like when I like was I had them all, laid out on my bed and I was like trying to figure out
That's
what
cool.
fit where. And it all just like fell into place. Like it all just like I was like, oh, yep, that's 10. Yep, here's 20. Oh, these two can combine and now that's 10. Like it really like I think I realized that like because I've always been like those kinds of ways of structuring story have been a little bit always like kind of confusing to me. Like I just didn't really understand how to sort of like fit the story into that framework. But then
Right.
I kind of realized like, oh, the story that I want to tell already fits into that framework. I just need to like, you know, put the pieces in the places. Really. So that was it was cool. And it was like the letting go of the idea of it being perfect. And I think it was
Mm,
also just like having the courage and my convictions of being like the things you want to say in this story, the things you want to do, they're good. Just go with it. Just like go with your first idea and just like do it. Like
yeah.
and it was interesting too how much of it was stuff that I'd figured out a long, long time ago, but had felt like, oh no, that can't be it. That's not interesting enough. That's not complicated enough. That's not like whatever enough. But then
Hmm.
I put it all out on those cards and I was like, this is good. This is like plenty to get me a good enough outline to finish the book. And that's where it stands now, even though I didn't do NaNoWriMo, like I have that outline and it's what I'm using to finish the book. So it really was for the best, I think.
So when you have all these cards like laid out, like I know for me it helps to visually see these things and I can like I don't have to like look through a document and see like what happens in card 22 or what happens in card 38. Like I can see it and I can think about it. Um, in terms of plot, that really helps. But did
Hmm.
it change your perception of the emotional journey of the characters by having them physically in front of you, or just in general with that outline? Did your perception of your lead change?
I think that, like you said, it's definitely the cards are more, I think, helpful for the plot stuff, the things that
Hmm.
do happen. But I think it did help me. Um, definitely, I think it's the writing that's been helping me figure out the characters and the emotional journey more is like the
Mm.
actual writing of these plot points. And so like I because I think I had like a general sense of where all these characters were going to go. And
Hmm.
I don't think that doing the outline like revealed all that much. I think it gave me like the big moments,
Hmm.
um, which I think was helpful to see, to know like, okay, I know where these characters are going to end up. So now I think I have a better sense of like where I want them to start and what I want them to experience and go through as they go through. this journey. But yeah, I think the writing itself has been more helpful in figuring out that kind of stuff.
So you got the outline done, you started to write and started to play with things, and this is now, we're still in the summer
Hmm.
that you're starting to do this. So, um, what made you think about not doing NaNoWriMo? Well, what systems were kind of falling into place that you liked that you might have said Nano's not going to support this?
So I think what it really was the way that I was able to start writing what it because it's always been such a struggle for me to figure out how to fit writing into my day-to-day life.
Mm,
And I mean, I know it's been for you. This is a conversation that we've had so many times in so many different ways over the years. And it's a conversation that I've had with a lot of other writers. Like, how do you find time? How do you make time? How do you like protect time for writing? And I think that I have usually always done my writing in these short bursts, like short, sustained bursts. I
mm,
go to a coffee shop and
mm,
I work for a few hours to write a story or to write a scene or something. Or um, I'm doing a writing competition. And so I have that weekend. And so or that week, and I just kind of like, get everything out in that week and I work on it um all like as like uh really like nonstop during that period. I'm like thinking about it, I'm working on it. But that I just realized like that is just a really difficult um like a difficult pace to maintain over time. And my partner says this a lot, like it's a marathon. You're running a marathon. You're not, it's not a race, like it's not a sprint. Like writing a novel is a marathon, and so you have to pace yourself. And that was what I really realized was like what I don't even know how I ended up coming upon this as like the option, but I think I just sort of like through a process of elimination, I was like, I think the only time I consistently have to myself to write is like before I go to bed at night. Like
mm.
that's pretty much like I can control what time I go to bed. I can control like everything I do to get ready for bed and like all this. I can get myself like nice and like relaxed and calm and like ready for bed. And I usually read before bed. So it was just sort of like, okay, well, what if I just write a little bit before bed, before I read, and just write enough just to, just get something on the page. And
Yeah.
so my goal was to just write 500. Well, I just started actually. I just like started at first, I just started writing. Like I would write as much as I felt like writing. And then I think after the first couple times I did it, I was getting around like between 250 to 500 words. And it wasn't that hard to get to 500 words. And that felt like a good, nice, like round number. So I was like, let's make the target 500 words. It doesn't take that. It takes like a half hour or an hour, depending on,
Yeah.
how much I know about what I'm writing. And that just really like worked for me was like just this incorporating writing into my like, kind of like chill, calm down evening routine. It made it not stressful. It made it something that was just part of all of the other things that I do to sort of wind down for the night and get myself ready for the next day.
Mhm.
Um, and it was something that I was like, I was able to keep doing it. So I started in August, and then I was like, I was doing it like oh, like a couple times a week. Like and the word count just started to like creep up and up and up.
Hmm.
And I just realized I think that I was like, if I try to commit myself to like tripling my word count and having to do it every day, um, I'm gonna burn myself out. Like I
Yeah.
don't think I think it's gonna make this not fun anymore. And it's gonna make it like stressful and it's gonna make it and I was really concerned that if I was also concerned that if I tried to do that and I wasn't able to, that it would just make me feel like I had failed. And then I'd have this
Mm.
negative association with my novel that I'd like failed NaNoWriMo, I wasn't able to do it, whatever. And so I just decided that it really made more sense to just keep going at like this slow pace. And even though it is a slow pace and it's like sometimes it feels like nothing, like I write those 500 words and I'm just like, what am I doing? But then I look at it and I'm like, got almost 20,000 words new that I didn't have before. So like it
That's
adds up.
amazing.
It just takes time. Thank you. Like it adds up.
Excuse me.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think ultimately I decided not to do it because I just realized that what I was doing was working. And so why change it if it's working?
Yeah. I mean, it's so cool because like you're safeguarding yourself from things you know they're going to shut you down. And I think with
Yeah.
something that's so precious like a book, especially a first book where you're learning how to not be precious with it and just have fun, like and you're working off the same device that you do work for the workday in, and you're in the
Hmm.
same environment for a lot, like there's so much overlap.
Yeah.
So it's like it's cool for me to see you acknowledging like what your triggers are going to be and then figuring out like what's a better place for this activity. Like where's a better place for this activity to live?
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
cool because I think that for years it was like we were like writing stories to like get them out into the world and put them out there and to be seen. And I think now we know we can do that.
Hmm.
Especially through your like initiative to like get us published and stuff.
Yeah.
But now it's like it's returning to that cozy vibe. I mean, we've talked about like the good old days of Tumblr where you could just disappear and like have a good time and it would just be nice and warm and cozy and I think that it's cool that you found on your own that you had to return to that for your story, which I think is like a coming home energy,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
like we feel so at peace and at home and like we can dive into the worlds of the stories that we read. Why would writing be any different than that? And I get that sometimes
Yeah.
like it is arduous and it is a a labor of love at times. Um, but I think reinforcing that is what's inspiring to me because like you're consistently reinforcing that like writing and winding down and relaxing and being cozy and that kind of stuff. They're correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like they're becoming synonymous. Like,
Yeah, they are. And that's such a good point that you just made about like, that's how we or at least like how I and a lot of people I know like will consume stories like that. It's when you're cozy, you're relaxing. I've always read before going to bed. So I'm like
hmm
experiencing stories before I go to sleep and like so yeah, why shouldn't writing my own story be part of that process? Like be done in the same way. That's how somebody would read it, hopefully, one day.
yeah.
So
Well, that's a cool thought.
yeah, that's
That is a cool
really
thought.
cool. That'd be really cool. Um, yeah, so I think it's been really good. And I mean, I'm very like I feel like yeah, I'm being very protective of this because it is so new. Like the being able to write consistently this is
Hmm.
like a very new thing for me that I haven't been able to tap into since I was really young. Like that was how often I would write when I was like, 11, 12. And so I'm trying to protect it. And like I don't write on the weekends if I have a
That's
lot.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just don't. The weekends are my like time to do whatever I want to do. Like they're my off time. Like it's like
Hmm.
writing's not work, but it's also not like I don't know, it's a little bit complicated to categorize, but I've avoided like not even avoided. I've just chosen not to write on the weekends. Like sometimes I get this urge, like I'm like, ooh, I could probably write a bunch of words right now. And then I'm like, why don't you just save that energy for during the week? Save it
That's
for
cool.
those times when like you're sitting, you're getting ready for bed, whatever, and spend the weekend like, doing whatever you want, socializing, relaxing, baking, watching
Hmm.
movies, like all the stuff that refreshes you and makes it so that you can write during the week. So it's been a good balance. It's been and like I know if I'm gonna have a busy week, if I have a lot going on, I don't like hold myself to that writing. Like writing is kind of the last thing on my list of things that
Mm.
I like. There's a lot of other things that I will prioritize for my well-being first. And then if I get all those things done that are good for my well-being and I still have time and it's not too late, then I write. And that's like my last like it's like that
It's a little sweet.
self-actualization, like it's like I met all of my basic needs and my like higher needs, and now I'm hitting my little self-actualization creativity need once everything else is taken care of.
I mean, I like that. I think it's like you're giving yourself the gift of having this cozy time at the end of the day to do it. And but you know what? Like just through you describing all this, I'm like the distress is gone from your voice. You're at ease with it, and I think it's really cool because for so long it was like we'll be at ease with this when it's published and when it's done and we're making money and we can leave our day jobs and things like that. And it's like
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
ain't gonna happen. Like I mean it could happen, I don't know, but it's
It
like
could happen, but
the
also like
juggling of multiple things and the chipping away is not going anywhere. That's
no.
just a part of the process, but you seem very relaxed about the whole thing, which is like
Yeah.
a huge achievement.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it feels a lot better. It is still definitely difficult at times. Like I still get frustrated by how long it takes, by how
Hmm.
by how much there still is that needs to be done. But I think what's been helping is I mean, we've had a lot of conversations and you've shared a lot of things with me that have sort of changed the way I think about it too. But like the idea that like it's not just this one book and then done. Like
Right.
you've done it, you've made it. Like I want to write a lot of books, and so like they're probably going to be written in the same way, and so um I've got to create a system of doing this. Like I've got to create a sustainable system of doing this that's going to allow me to do this for the rest of my life. And after this first book, I don't know, maybe I will be maybe I'll get to a certain point where I do increase my word count and I am writing more often, and maybe I will write on the weekends, but I'm just trying to like for now, like just do as much as exactly what I can do. That's
Hmm.
doing something to chip away at it and not doing more because don't want to I don't want to lose my progress. I don't want to get just have this feel negative again. I want it to keep feeling
Right.
positive.
I mean, you're training your brain really
Yeah. Yeah.
to understand that it's safe, understand that like you're writing in a way that you wrote as a kid, and that takes time to build those pathways and to reinforce them and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Um,
felt really scary at first. I mean, I think I realized how much, and I bet I'm sure you can speak to this too. I know you felt similarly, but like it felt so scary at first writing, like trying to sit down in front of that blank page.
oh,
And
it's terrible.
it's so scary. It was so scary. And it's still sometimes I'll realize like I have to be really honest with myself where I'm just like, okay, do I not have time tonight or am I just afraid? Like, am I just afraid to start writing because I'm afraid that
Mhm.
I'm not going to be able to write anything, or I'm afraid that what I write won't be good? And if that's what's stopping me, then I'm like, no, you're writing. You're
Do you ever feel like
writing.
that
Like,
voice becomes louder when you're like the closer you are to the computer or the paper? Like when you're like in bed and you're
yeah,
thinking about it or you're like out doing stuff,
yeah.
it's like, oh, that could happen. But as soon as like you're ready to do it,
As soon as I
it
open
just
like Scrivener and
escalates.
my writing outline, then I'm like, okay, okay,
Am I doing this?
all
All right.
right, we're doing this.
But I
And
think that
like,
that's so cool to like be able to identify like that's the ego freaking out because and it's gonna pump every bit that it has of your imagination to, toss every fear your way
yeah,
and lie to you because it's afraid of the person that it's becoming, which is
yeah,
really just you, but in a more like free way.
yeah. It's like instead of
And
using that
that's
imagination
crazy.
to come up with all the things that could go wrong, use that
Yeah.
imagination to come up with something for your story. Like use that like
Right.
imagine what happens next instead of what. But I mean, I think so much of it it's been such a journey. Like there's been so many things that like that I've done that you and I have done, like the artist's way, the morning pages, like all these
Hmm.
things that have all come together and culminated in me being able to just write 500 words occasionally when I
Isn't that
when I
crazy?
can. It's
Isn't that
crazy.
crazy?
It
How
is crazy.
long? But it makes the journey of writing those 500 words. Like you feel the importance of those 500 words again. And sure, it's like that you could write the book and you will, and there are going to be so many other achievements. So looking at the 500 words, it's sort of like it's like eating a crumb of like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
cake, and it's like, oh, what a delicious, sweet, like,
It's like it's
and it's
all
tough.
something. It's all like leading somewhere. Like I think it really
Yeah.
is like it's books are long and they take a lot of work. Like I feel like it's just you have to take that step back and be
Mhm.
like, it's a lot of words, it's a lot of pages, it's a lot of like, and all of it doesn't have to be the most amazing thing that's ever been
Right.
written. Like a lot of it is probably just going to be like you've been saying, like a lot of what you're working on, it's just like nonsense. Or like and
Oh
same for
yeah.
me. Like a
I
lot
love
of it
that.
is just like nonsense. Like, but that's okay because like this is the first draft.
Yeah.
But we should talk about too, like what because you did do write your novel. You did do National Novel Writing Month in your own way. And you should
Yeah.
probably speak to what your decision was with that, and then maybe we can talk about like how that changed your writing.
Yeah. Okay. Excuse me. Um, yeah, so you were proposing the idea, and I
Hmm.
was like, love the idea, but no. I've got enough going on. I'll figure this out. I'll figure it out.
Yeah,
But I realized, as I've been realizing this year, that this has been the year of letting go. 2024 is the year of letting go for me, and it's realizing that there are just too many projects and too many things that I'm doing, so I can't do them all at the same time. That was a good lesson. And putting stuff out into the world and having that idea of like, the intersection of like it being cozy but sharing it is where I needed to like retrain myself. So throughout the year, as I was stopping projects, letting a lot of my stories and ideas out through the podcast, I felt freer And then by the summer when you were doing yours, it was cool because I saw you doing it, and then I was like, oh, well, why don't I just do it then?
Right.
And then I started thinking about it and thinking about it. And my outline wasn't written until like I think October was the September I was gonna like get back into like get the ideas and see if it was something I wanted to do.
Hmm.
Um, but then once I kind of hit October, I was like I was actually having fun again. And I reflected on this in like an episode or two ago, but it was like I had to retrain myself this whole fall of like no expectations, no word counts, none of this stuff. Like you sit
Yeah.
down and you just play and have fun and just see where it takes you and just see what you remember and see what you want to do. And so much got done so quickly and I was having a great time doing it and I was thinking about it and it was cool. It wasn't this like uptight tension that I had had. So when the
Yeah.
outline kind of just came together, I was like, why wouldn't I do this? Why wouldn't I hop in?
Yeah.
And I did. I think I got to like almost 30,000 words.
Yeah.
Almost
That's a
30.
lot. That's
It's a
great.
lot. I mean, I migrated a lot of things from other versions.
Hmm.
But that was, oh, it's so interesting because I found that I do have a lot more time than I think that I do. And
Mm.
so much of it is spent in the fear and worrying state. So there
Yeah.
was a point where I was we had talked about this, but like I was very frustrated because I was very tired and sad about like just some creative thing and I was trying to figure out why that happened that way. And I
Hmm.
backed it up to just like you're tired and sad because you're burnt out because of anxiety. And the anxiety stems from fear because you don't feel safe about something. So let's look at that thing
Mm.
that you don't feel safe with, but then look at that fear as the portal that you go through. Like what happens if you don't kick it away, but you transform it?
Hmm.
So I visualized like the visualized those fears right in front of me, and then I like talked to it like it was my inner child. It's
Hmm.
like they're like it's okay, it's cool. Here's a hug, and then gently like it's like I imagined like the little child energy just being like curled up and afraid, and then like tense,
Hmm.
and letting it relax and letting it connect and letting me connect. And I just did that for like all of these different parts of writing that I was getting blocked with. Because
Hmm.
if I was writing something of a scene that like I hadn't really written before, it really wasn't a problem to write the nonsense. It was
Okay.
cool, it was fun. But if I started to touch upon things I had already kind of written, I would get very guarded and very
Mm.
uptight.
Okay. Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was transforming my relationship with those things to like let my inner voice, like my spirit, make the decisions, not my head.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's a cool place to and it's similar to you like learning how to like do like taking baby steps in this new way. Because
Yeah.
now it's like I'm identifying the feeling of being afraid and not just being numb to it or pushing it away.
Yeah. Yes.
And through that, I'm making decisions, which I realize with my story, I think of the grand things that I love.
Hmm.
But then when it comes to things that I need to have decisions about just to move characters forward and plot things and world building, I would avoid it or I would think of 20 options. And it's like
Yeah.
these are just fear-based. But,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's important to say that like the fear is valid. Like
Yeah.
there's just an unhealed wound in certain
Hmm.
ways that needed to be like beliefs that needed to be changed.
Hmm.
But I liked Nano because in this environment, it was like a real life laboratory of sorts. So like I had
Yeah.
to look at it and I was in the zone and I cleared everything else out. So I mean, I'm happy with it. I'm happy that I'm back in. I'm happy that I'm seeing this world. Definitely not going to be writing 6 pages a day anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, there
That's
it
fair.
like
That's a
it's
lot. That's the thing.
possible,
I
but it's
looked at
just
I like when after I'd written the 500, I was like, I have to write two times as much, like more, like that's so much. Like it's
No, I would
It's
break it up. Like I would do like 500 in the morning, and then I would
yeah,
do like on my lunch break or whatever, I'd go out for coffee and do some more, and then I'd come home and do the rest.
that's smart.
But if you
Like
can't
that's
hit
the
each of
kind of
those things,
yeah. Yeah.
I can't
No,
sit and write
that's
1,600 words. It's not that I can't, it's just
well, I
I
think
don't have the
personally,
brain power to do it.
I think you run out of fuel,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you really do. Like, I mean, I feel like that's part of the reason why I like normally I do keep it to just that 500 words because I feel like if I go much
Mm,
longer than that, I can feel like myself kind of like sputtering, like I'm like the wheels are spinning and
right.
nothing's moving and like it's I'm not coming out with I'm not
You're
saying that
trying to
like
light a
what I'm
match that's just
writing,
like
it's just
not
not.
the thing's all like ripped up and you're just like,
Yeah, it's just done. Like I'm spent. Like after that
mhm.
500 words, like, or maybe I have a little bit left, but why not save it for like next writing session? Why not? Like it's almost feels like I'm
Yeah, that's cool.
imagining it kind of like as a little like it's got like a little health meter or something, and you can, like the stamina, and you can like
Yeah.
use it up, but then you have to like refill it. You have to like do other things to refill it. And if you do too much, then you're gonna run out.
Mm,
But I mean, it seems like for you that Nano was just like a really good like impetus to like just dive back into it, like to just like to face those
yeah.
fears and just dive into it and like see yourself doing it and just get a better sense of
Mhm.
where you're at because I mean for both of us it's been a long journey, but I know for you too, like you had so much done and then you shelved it, and like I did the same thing. Like I had a ton done and then I like because like what's interesting too, what sounds like you did it a little differently or you're doing it a little differently than I am is that I already like because I had before I like started all of this like 160 pages written that I'd written over the past like
That's
10
a lot.
years. That's a lot. Yeah, it's a good amount of pages.
Yeah.
And I recently, I think at the start of 2022 or 2023, I like reread all of those pages and wrote notes and stuff. And then um, I was like, I was planning to revise all of that. But then we like had the whole revelation that like you really shouldn't touch any of that stuff until you're done with
Yeah, that's
um
a big one.
that conversation. Was that the conversation with
That
Juliet
was
Giglio?
Juliet. Yeah.
Yeah, where she was like, don't touch any of that. Don't revise, don't go back.
You make a note and you keep
And you
moving.
just keep going. And
You
that was
do
really
not.
important because what I then
Mhm.
did was with my outline. I mean, I outlined the whole thing, but then I created a writing outline, which was just like where I left off,
Mhm.
continuing on from there. So I haven't touched any of the stuff or really
That's
looked
cool.
at any of the early stuff. And what you were saying about how like some of the scenes that like you've written a long time ago and then going back to them, that felt scary. I think that's going to be really scary for me when I'm actually done and I'm going back to that stuff that I wrote a long time ago and having to update it and change it. I
Mhm.
think that is going to be like that's going to be a new challenge.
Well, I sent you a voice message yesterday about I was writing a day or two ago and I was working on a scene and I bumped up against a different way that I could do it. So I was definitely positioning myself in a certain way for the scene to end. And then I was like, well, actually, what if it was this? And then it dawned on me this was the exact thing that I had written 5 years ago, six
Mm,
years ago.
hmm.
And what was neat was that my reaction was different. And then I sort
Okay.
of caught myself in that, like, I know in the past I would have gotten there and I would have been really frustrated and defeated and just like, well, this can't work and I don't know what I'm doing and blah, blah, blah. But it was cool of like, I knew as soon as I saw that and I got it written down, I was like, meter is empty. Walk away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like it was cool because I didn't feel any attachment necessarily to either outcome. But I
Mm-hmm.
was like, this isn't gonna be resolved by me looking at the screen right now.
Yeah.
Now it's like I know for myself that there's if I have the ideas and then I refine those a bit into like the loose bullets that I need to do, and then I get it on the page, then when it's on the page, I figure stuff out. Then it feels
Mm-hmm.
good. But there's like that when I get to 91 or 2%,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not going to be solved on the page. It's only going to be solved by me like knowing it's time to leave and
Mm-hmm.
go in my bed and stare at the ceiling with the lights off, or go and do the dishes and just like put the noise canceling headphones on and just zone out,
Yeah.
and then the things will just sort of fall in the right place. And it was cool because I saw that like, oh, I could bring this over and it's not a defeat thinking that, oh, I already had the answer. Because I
Yeah.
think that is what writing a novel is. It's not flash fiction. It's not a short story. Whereas like you do have to remember what's in the story and how to like bring things together in really cool ways with literary devices. But like a book, man, you have to remember a lot of things, and it is just so
Yeah.
challenging to hold on to a decade's worth of thinking,
Yeah. It
and which
really
is
is,
kind
which
of
is why we
crazy.
made that decision to pause our other project because we
Yeah.
both realized like we cannot hold on to all of this. Like this is just
Hmm.
like way too much to, and I don't know, maybe I'd be curious to like talk to, I mean, and I know Juliet Giglio said that again, that was her, that was another one of her gems of wisdom that we took. But
Yeah.
like I'm curious, like, how it would be if, because we're both working on these world building fantasy,
Mm.
science fiction-ish stories. And then the other project that we paused was also like a big world building fantasy, like,
Big world.
like thing. And I wonder, like, I mean, at least for us, like it was like the worlds were too big. I could not hold on to all of these
Yeah.
worlds, like all, and I wonder if it's different if maybe you're writing like different kind, if you're working on like projects that aren't so like world buildy, like, and maybe you, but I don't know,
Mm.
there's still so many characters and there's so many plot points. It feels like just a lot. I think it would probably be too much for at least probably most young writers to try to hold on to these two huge stories at the same time. And as soon as
Right.
we paused the Midnight Hearth, it was like my brain just like
Relaxed.
it was like it just like opened up like a new like a
I just
like
felt
a new
like,
compartment like
oh.
opened up, and all of a sudden all of the stuff in the back for my story that had been there was just like whoop, like here we are, we're doing it, like, and it all came
Yeah.
back, and like, and
And it
all the
was
Midnight
there.
Hearth stuff, I'm sure I'll remember. It's still there somewhere,
It's
but it's in the
that's not
back
going
now.
anywhere.
It's not. We'll like remind ourselves of it once we're ready to dive back into that. But it really like, because you're like there are so many details and plot points that you have to hold on to, and decisions,
Hmm.
and what you were talking about with this scene when you realized you'd written it that way before. I think that's so interesting, like the way that made you feel, and like how that changed, because I feel like I definitely ran into a lot of that stuff when I was outlining, where when I was trying to make these decisions,
Hmm.
part of me was like, well, yeah, but that's exactly how I was gonna do it like 10 years ago. Like, and then it was like, well, yeah, that means you were right all along. Like, you
Right.
knew all along, you knew, but you weren't like brave enough to believe in it. And now you are.
Takes a lot of courage to write a story, and I feel like people don't realize that it's very hard. It's hard to not only share your work with the world, but it's hard for you to even see yourself doing it and for it to feel aligned. And like, because I've heard comments of like, you don't have to embody every character's point of view and know everything, but it's like, no, but I have to understand it. And I can understand it objectively, like, or from a distance. But I guess like from my example, it was like realizing that what I had learned in the period of when I wrote it to now, I know so much more. So now I'm viewing it of like, oh, what was missing was having the courage to write the emotional part of like the reaction to that and
Yeah,
understanding what that would be. And I think that like for a young writer, it's just unless you really understand all these things, it's just it takes time to grow as a person to have the courage to talk about these things and
yeah,
courage to like follow it through and write with your vulnerabilities because I think that's ultimately what it is, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
pouring your vulnerabilities into the decisions that you make.
It's
So I
true and
feel
it's
better about
scary.
that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's kind of what I was alluding to when I said like the that character and emotional journey stuff is happening during the writing because I
Hmm.
definitely am like there is such a difference in the way that I'm writing now and the way that I wrote those earlier parts. Like
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of good stuff in those earlier parts that like a lot of work went into that. And I think a lot of it is still going to be usable um for like when I get started on like a second draft. But the way that I'm writing now, like it is that vulnerability of being able to be so much closer to it. And like
Hmm.
wrote a scene of like the main character crying. And I feel like I'd never had her like cry before up until
Oh,
like to that when I was like, yeah, she should be crying. Like this is
wow.
really hard. She's little. Like, this
Yeah,
is
she's
tough.
12.
And
Yeah.
it felt like I was like, oh, do I really want to like have her cry right now? And I'm like, yeah, you'd be crying. So she should be crying. Like,
Wow.
like that. And that was like it's moments of that in that emotional closeness where I'm like, I think she's mad right now, but I don't know why. But I'm just gonna make her mad. And then, I'll figure but I do think it's in the writing that I've been realizing like I'll have these I'll just want it to be some way. But it's connecting to that like I don't know, just that sense inside yourself of like what you know should happen and what you want to happen, and then trusting that and knowing that
Mm.
like what you want to do, like what I always just keep telling myself is like what you think is good and it's going to be good. And the people who it's for are going to like it. So, and obviously, it's not all
Mhm.
like amazing at this point. It's a first draft, but the like that will come later. All of the polishing and the perfecting and perfecting, making it better will come later. And right now it's just getting that like raw, vulnerable, emotional and the plot onto the page.
Yeah. Remember that TikTok that I sent you? Excuse me, where it was like the writer was breaking down what the first couple drafts look like. And it was
Yes.
like the first draft has for this writer like every single sentence has spelling errors and grammar
Yeah.
errors. And
Yeah.
that's mostly like the goal of like draft two is only cleaning up the sentences so they're readable.
Yeah.
And then the next draft is making them better.
Yeah.
And then there's four and there's five
Yeah.
that
Yeah, that
helped me a
was really
lot.
that's a really that like I think I probably won't do that many drafts, I hope. But like I love the like but I feel like that sentiment is like is how every writer should approach it of like
Hmm.
really like whatever it is that like your first draft, like my first drafts are always so wordy and like
Mm.
and like overly long and like sentences being like overly long and just going on and on forever. And I'm just embracing that. I'm just like, that's fine. It doesn't have like it can be super, super wordy. Like I and I'm having all these like other thoughts and putting little notes and so it's not very focused, but that's okay because
It's
that's
okay.
what your first draft looks like. And so this other writer's first draft,
Mhm.
it's full of errors and like grammar and spelling mistakes. Well, that's great because they're just downloading exactly what's in their brain onto the page. They're not filtering it through anything. They're just,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm doing too. But I mean, I'm an editor, so like I feel like
Yeah, I do not have that
I
problem.
can't like not I can't I'm not maybe there's some mistakes in there, but they're probably mostly caught by autocorrect or whatever. But like I think it's great. Also, especially if you were going to be handwriting it,
Mm.
maybe they handwrite it to like Peter handwrites all of his first drafts, my partner.
Yeah, some people do that.
Yeah, that's never worked for me, but
I like playing with it on the page. Like I kind of like moving things around a little bit, and
yeah,
I don't
that's
know, which I
fair.
guess I shouldn't be doing as much when I'm in this stage, but it is fun to be able to zip
Like
around and see
word
what I wrote. Didn't I write
processing.
this? Command F and
Yeah.
then just look and
I just need to be able to like go fast. Like I need to be able to type fast and I can't handwrite as fast as I can type. So that's really mainly
handwriting is
why
great
I
for
type it.
ideation for me. Like it's just like
Yeah.
if I need to like figure out how to get the idea out of me, and then I get it there, and then I can like I was saying before, like writing it, typing it in those beats, and then making it work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work the other way because I can just type
Hmm.
ideas, but for some reason I never go back and look at them. And if I do, like I'm
Yeah.
just not interested. Like I don't feel any emotional connection to ideation on a computer.
Yeah,
I
I
just
think
don't.
that the same is probably true for me because I hand wrote all of those, like my outline, the cards, I hand wrote all of that. And I think that was really helpful for just like even less of a filter, just like brain hand done,
Yeah,
like yeah.
yeah. Less distractions, and you can just like,
And it
yeah,
really doesn't have to be like I was like writing on plain index cards with pencil. Like it was like this does not have to be good
right.
at all. It's just getting it out there. Um, so yeah.
Well, I think it's great how much we've learned, and I'm glad we did this, and in our own ways, and but I think it's like with anything, like if you're gonna do stuff, like I'm learning, don't rush the process. Look at your reaction to it and slowing it
Hmm.
down just a little bit because in the long run, that's the game changer. I mean, I saw so much of myself of like, of old me that is still there of like, this needs to be publishable or this needs to get me out into the world and it's just like, brah, like this is just your ego. Like, calm down. This was
Yeah.
this was not the reason why you got into all this stuff.
Yeah.
It was not. And that voice is just as strong. It's just that needs a little more, I don't know,
Yeah.
massaging and relaxing and then it gets warmed up and it's like, okay, yes, yes, I remember. I
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah. And it's true. I mean, all of those things are definitely still there for me as well. But I think what I keep trying to remind myself is like this is the way, like the way that anybody else does these things and the way that anybody else gets published and the way it goes for anybody else, that's not the way it's gonna go for you. Like you
Hmm.
can find your own way. And I
Right.
really like hope and I believe that like if you like really believe in a story and you put your all into it, you put your heart into it, you put effort and work into it, it'll get out there. You'll find a way, it'll get out there.
It'll
Like
get out there.
and it'll connect with the right people. And what I keep telling myself. And like when I really connect with a story and I read about kind of like how it happened and how the person it usually is like somebody it's against odds, it's against
Hmm.
like and it's just I believed in this and so I did it. I think that that makes for really great work, and it makes for great stories, great creativity. So, yeah, just do it your own way. Figure out your own way and then do it.
And there's something to that that's really important in that, like you do need to just figure it out for yourself. I mean, I definitely went through the phase of like consuming every interview I could of my favorite authors and filmmakers and like trying to find the right system.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not that that isn't a good idea because you can learn different
I think it's
things.
good for experiment. Like I think you should experiment with like different.
Yeah, it can be a vessel to like get you to try new things, but like a lot of it's understanding how your brain works and like what feels good for your body and things like that. And I know for me, like I'm still when I'm eating what feels good for my body. Not like just like I could look up a thing of dieting and see like what looks good, da 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 da. But it's like, okay, if I like cut down the sugar, if I stop drinking like I don't drink coffee anymore at all.
Hmm.
Like it's just
Yeah.
matcha. That works for me. And I found a way to make it work. Like there are systems. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is understanding that there are tons of ways to do things and you should, saturate yourself with all the different options.
Yeah.
But then it's like it's that process, I think, of awareness and then illumination and then integration. And then it
Yeah.
clicks of like then you have the ownership over like this actually does feel good. Like, you sitting in bed, like writing, this actually feels good.
Yeah.
And it's cool.
Exactly.
Then you have an experience to relate it to, and then it becomes, yeah, how you want to live your life.
I think it is about it has to be figuring out what works for you because you're the artist, you're the writer, like and like you said, it's the ways your brain works, like, and what I have found for me, like, and I mean, I feel like I would recommend this for most people, but like, I think it can be tough, um, because I mean, everybody wants to get tons of things done. Everybody wants to like
Hmm.
make really, really fast progress and see change happen, but it has to be sustainable. Like,
Hmm.
overall, I think that's the most important thing for anything. Like you were talking about what you eat, like or like what like the ways you move. All these things have to be sustainable. If you can't stick with it, then it's
Yeah.
not good for you. Like if you can't stick with it, like if you can't like over a long period of time, like keep to these things that like are good for you, then they're not good for you. Like it has to be something that I mean, obviously there's also like these you can do like short-term challenges, like the idea of doing like a writing challenge just to like test yourself and experiment. But I think like when it comes to just like the day to day, when we have so many competing priorities, like
Hmm.
when you're working a 9 to 5, when you're handling like relationships and like chores and all these things that everybody has to like maybe you have children, like maybe you have a job, like maybe you do other things, like you got to figure out what you can stick to. And if you can stick, it maybe feels really small, but if you can stick to it, it'll add up. Like it's like how I feel like
Hmm.
the first thing that I ever did that I realized would work like this is like with my Duolingo. Like I have been doing Duolingo. I have a 5 year streak on Duolingo, a more than 5 year streak, because I just do one lesson every night before bed. That's
That's
it.
awesome. That's
And I
awesome.
I don't do anything else. I don't do more. Like, and that like I'm just like that's proof positive right there that if you just stick to something little teeny tiny
Yeah.
that you can stick to, it'll add up. It'll take you places. It feels small. 500 words feels small, but over time it'll take you places.
The short story competitions, and I think even NaNoWriMo, and this is my final note of like they're wonderful ways for you to sort of be experimenting, to
Yeah.
be a part of the writing world
Yeah.
and sort of see it and then sink back into your life. But if it's something you enjoy, you're going to continue to think about it. And then over time, I think you start to realize, oh, like the waves of this can like become a part of my actual life. And that's something that I've gotten out of it. Like giving myself permission to, for those like 48 hours in a competition of like being saturated in that experience. Of course, like I'm thrusting myself in it and I'm doing 200%.
Yeah.
But then I think over time of doing that and doing it again and again and again and then doing the bigger one, it's just sort of like, this is how I enjoy living my life, doing this activity, but at this relaxed, um,
Yeah.
in this relaxed way of not
Yeah.
feeling the pressure to like have to finish anything. Because that does sort
Yeah.
of go against like the love of it. The desire
Yeah.
to finish it like starts to kick in, and the
Yeah.
desire to show up and the desire to like be there. And it's still, I mean, I don't know, like it's still hard each, like when I sit down to like write words, like it's still, you know, it's, I love comparing writing to running. The first mile, ugh. The second
Yeah.
mile, ugh. But then the third mile, it's okay. You start to get that dopamine. It starts to kick in. You start to feel good, and then by mile 4 or 5, you're like soaring, and it's great.
Yeah, I'm not a runner. I can't relate. Although
Right, that only works for me. But,
I
but
feel
that's
like,
how I view
one of
it.
these
Like
days
it's
maybe
tough.
I will because I do feel like there's something about that. I've
Well,
been getting,
doing yoga,
yeah, yeah.
getting the yoga clothes on, putting the mat out, getting
And
Adrian
you're
on the
like, oh,
computer. It's just
yeah.
like,
I don't even use Adrian anymore.
yes, you just,
I just do what I want to do.
that's
It's great. I love it. But no, you're right.
good.
It's true.
Just like,
It's hard to
finally
like get
getting
into
there.
it. It takes a little bit of there's like that period of like just sort of adjusting and sinking into it, and then it starts to flow. And
Yeah.
that is what you have to get through in order to like be writing regularly. And it is tough. Like when you're talking about like with the writing competitions or with like publications and things like that, like it's tough to like have the book be the thing you're working on and not have anything to show for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's tough.
When
Like
it's like, when can I read it?
yeah,
I hate
people
that
will like
question.
ask, like people will, and I
When will it
love
be
that people
done?
ask about, what's going on with my writing and like, but I like people have asked like, oh, you were like getting published a lot there. Like, what are you doing now? Like, and I'm just like, yep, just writing the book, just still writing the book, and
Yeah.
I think that that's another, like you were talking about, like that's like an ego thing of like wanting to see that outside and wanting to
Hmm.
receive that external validation of being published, of doing well in a competition, of being able to tell people about that you had a story published and having them congratulate you or like things like that. Like all of that is great, but I think that writing the book is
Hmm.
it's I mean it's a solitary experience of just sitting there and getting it done, and that's hard. Like that can be it's very difficult to know that this is just going to be living in my computer for, years to come,
Yeah.
probably. But I mean,
It's okay.
I think that's just the reality of it. It's just a lot of work.
But it feels good when
Yeah.
it's happening. And I think that's the, you know, the most important
Yeah.
takeaway, that if it feels good in the moment.
Yeah. And it does feel really good. It feels so good to be writing. It feels It just feels great to know that the story is moving, and it feels good to be living in the story and be thinking about it all the time and daydreaming about it and coming up with ideas and knowing like being excited about the next scene I'm going to write, or it feels good to be just connected um
Yeah.
with the book again, which it seems like what you wanted to get out of NaNoWriMo was really just like being connected with the book again.
So I'd say we achieved that. We did
Yeah.
it. We did it
Yes. We did NaNoWriMo
in our own way, like we do
in
everything
our
else.
own ways. We did it.
Hell yeah. Well, great work.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for sharing all these insights. I mean, I've learned so much just from hearing you, like, reflect on the whole process over the past couple months, but like it's cool to see now that we're in December, like it's just cool to see how we've evolved. And now we can take that to the end of the year and
Yeah. And into
you know,
next year.
mm-hmm.
My
Yeah,
goal for next year
that,
is
that's
to
gonna be
finish the first draft. So,
you got this.
yeah, thank
Well,
you.
this time next year we're gonna have to
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
check
we're
in before then, but
yes. Yes, we should, and then and but no pressure. Oh.
so, everyone should go to Amanda's website if you haven't been there before, amandabintz.com, Bintz, so you spell her last name. She's got her blog post talking about what she just talked about, but I'm sure in more specific detail in certain ways. She's got
Mhm.
other blog posts, she's got her other interviews from this podcast, and she's got stories. Definitely hop over there and have a good time because it's a really great site.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Of course. Can't wait to have
Thank
you
you for
back in the
having me
future.
again. This is fantastic.